You seem to still be up there somewhere.
Maybe I am. There are flying saucers.
Supposing they're Martians or something in there.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm itsasherz and this is
Cassie.
And also
Chad Lewis.
Oh my god, the legend himself back on the show for a second time. We must like you around here. I don't know. It's
Greetings from the back roads of Wisconsin.
Oh my gosh. Oh well, you know, me and those Wisconsinites. I don't know. Like I said, my heart must belong there or something because I just keep coming back for more. I can't get enough of it. But we'll talk.
Call U-Haul.
You said you're looking for a new apartment.
That's true. I am. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am looking to move. We'll get more into Chad and why you're here. But first, Chad, I want to hear, how was your weekends?
My weekend was fantastic. I had a couple lectures and it was close to 50 degrees here in Wisconsin in February. So our beaches were packed with people and people are excited.
Yeah, we are getting a lot of that too here in Ohio. As we had 50. Well, it was in the 40s, but still, compared to what it's been like, it was. You can tell we're all Midwesterns here. We're like, oh, the weather.
Like I didn't wear a coat this weekend.
It's wild, right? You're like, I can move in my car.
Right.
It was great. Yeah, you do a lot of local talks and things, don't you?
I do through the Midwest, maybe 200 a year.
Wow.
And, a variety of public libraries, historical societies, conferences, universities. So, yeah, but I try to stay within a day's drive.
Sure. That's probably a good way. You don't have to get a room, right? And then you just go back home afterwards. That's
right.
Nice.
You're back and you're on an adventure and yeah, you get to hear a lot of local legends that I never would have been able to find hadn't been there in person, that we forget with today's modern world and the internet and everything at our fingertips, that there are a lot of legends that are still localized.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're always finding something new. And it's like, how did I not know about this? I don't understand. I thought I knew it all. And then you find out that you don't know it all. A new weird thing happens and you're like, well, I guess weird things are still happening all the time. Well, that's great. Yeah, it sounds like you had a great weekend, Cassie. How was your weekends?
I was good. I went and got the kids and Hunter brought one of his friends down. So we made them all work at the rental property on Saturday and we got a lot done. Like I was surprised on how well they all worked. Even John was going at it. So that was good, and they made us heart-shaped pizzas that worked, so I brought all them home to the guys that were working, and Sunday, pretty boring day Sunday. I was exhausted after, because you work out, and you're a waitress, and you think you're, like, good, and you don't get tired, and then you work on a rental property, and you're up and down a ladder, and squatting to paint, and doing all this, and you're just exhausted. Like, I was so tired Sunday after work. I came home and took, like, a 3-hour nap. And then I was ready for bed 2 hours later.
Good for you. Yeah, good for you.
But this weekend, me and Brandon are going to go see our great friends, Eric and Carrie, because we are both getting some ink therapy done on Friday.
But I'm so jealous. I love Eric and Carrie so much. Oh, my gosh. Lucky. Chad, you know Eric and Carrie.
For Giorgio?
Maybe.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Name sounds very familiar. I think we may have met up.
Yeah, I think you probably have been at similar events, but you're on opposite ends of each other. They're in Pennsylvania, and you're in Wisconsin, so somewhere in there. They're at Mothman every year. Eric does great artwork. He does just some really great fun pieces.
Maybe at Monster Fest? You were at Monster Fest, weren't you, Chad?
I don't believe so.
Were you not? The Small Town Monsters one?
No.
No.
That is really
So
surprising.
yeah, me and Chad have never met before.
I know, it's crazy. He's like, oh, I do 200 of these talks a year. And then there's all these people now that I guess he didn't see. You're always learning something new,
Exactly.
meeting someone new. Well, that's great. What are you getting tattooed?
So I'm getting the opposite side of my forearm done. So Eric did the Beetlejuice one last time for my Tim Burton tattoo. The other side is going to be Corpse Bride and Alice in Wonderland. So we're going to finish my forearm up, and then next time the sleeve is going to go at the top of my arm, and it's going to be Nightmare Before Christmas and Frankenweenie.
Very exciting stuff. What's Brandon getting? He's just going.
No, I bought Brandon a $200 tattoo gift certificate from Eric for Christmas. So he wants to get a sleeve done as well. So he's starting off with his he's getting one of those big crosses that are made out of nails on his forearm to start with.
Well, speaking of tattoos, they're going to be having tattoos at the this year's Frogman Festival. I don't know if you heard of it.
No way.
It's this little event happening on March 7th, coming up here in Loveland, Ohio. Yeah, they are. They did it last year too. Little flash tattoos and stuff. I wanted to get one done desperately, but it fills up quick.
You don't have any time at all.
I mean, and I was there before everybody else, and they were already like, well, we got such and such people. I'm like, well, I'm the MC. Like, I have to do this in between, like, being on stage. So I did not get to do that. But if you would like your very own tattoo at the Frogman Festival, get there early and get in line for it, because they're going to sell out quickly on those spots. So
who's doing them? Do you know?
Some Cincinnati-based shop.
Okay.
I probably should have known before I started to plug it, but you mentioned tattoos, so I thought I'd mention it.
No, I just didn't know if it was one of like our friends that we always hang out with at shows, but it's somebody new.
It is, yeah. It's somebody, like I said, they're local to Cincinnati, but people seem to have quite the fan base. So, get in there before their fans do, because they're going to be coming in droves to get their Frogman tattoo.
Yeah, did anyone get a Frogman?
Oh yeah. So they've got like more kind of frog caricatures. It depends on the artist. But one of them is doing like cryptid pinups, and one's a pinup frogman.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would go right next to my Mothman with abs.
Yeah, they've got a pinup Mothman and a pinup, I think it was a Fresno Nightcrawler. I mean, so, no, actually, you know what? Very fitting. It was a pinup Wendigo. So, I don't know, Chad.
whoever that person was.
Right. So, they've got some really interesting artwork out there. So come check it. I think you can get onto the Frogman Festival Facebook page and see who they are. They've got some previews of the flashes that they have available. So check those out.
Doing that now. How was your weekend?
Oh gosh, let's talk about my weekends. All I've done for the last week at minimum, more than that, probably more like going on 2 weeks now, is work on this book. And you guys cannot buy it yet, but it has been submitted for publishing, which means I'm just waiting on Amazon to review that I'm not using stolen material, and then it is done, and I'm done with it, and it's over.
Woohoo!
Until the next one that I'll probably start writing next week. So
no, you're not allowed.
You're right. I'm not allowed.
You have to take a break.
I told Cassie that after this book comes out, don't let me work on anything else until at least June, because I'm moving. I'm getting ready to move. And I'm like, I really got to focus on that. But Jesus, yeah. Book number 2. It's coming. And the first time that you can get it is, guess what? Also at Frogman Festival, Your Strange Guide to Ohio, Volume 1. Covering the area that we'll be at, southwestern counties in southwestern Ohio. So check it out. What's going to be really interesting and strange about this book series that I'm doing is that, of course, I'm going to cover the different areas in Ohio based off of, those little geographical chunks. And then once I'm done writing them all of those volumes, the individual volumes, will be out of print. and then I'm going to put them all into a big compendium book all together. So you'll definitely want to get your chance and get these books while they're available, because you won't get the original artwork. I'm taking a page out of my dead researchers books here, and all their books go for like $70 to $300, depending on what book you're talking about. And as a dead person, I'd love to see that for myself. So
Right.
that's the goal. So these are first run copies. Of course, I'll let you guys who aren't going to be in attendance at the festival know how to get them after the festival. But get them while you can. Get them while they're available. So, but when I was writing the book, okay, so again, I'm covering different places that you can go to in Ohio legally, where you can have strange experiences. And one of those areas that I wrote about, it's called George Rogers Clark Park. Okay, it's in Clark County, Ohio. And I grew up in Clark County. I'm not a Dayton native. I did grow up somewhere else in Ohio. Springfield, I guess, is probably the more political people know it as. But anyway, I went to George Rogers Clark Park one time as a kid. My mom took me and one of my friends. And this thing that she said to me while we were there, it just lives rent-free in my head. And while we're there, she's like, be careful. This is where the gay people hang out. And I didn't, I mean, I just thought maybe she was saying that because, during that time period, it's not funny now, but it was funny to call everything gay, right? That was part of the humor of the time. And I just thought maybe she was trying to be funny. But like, I'm writing this book and I'm doing research for George Rogers Clark Park. And I was like, why did she say that? Did she say it just to be funny? Or like, did the gay people hang out at George Rogers Clark Park? So I was talking to her last night, and right before we hung up, I'm like, wait, I got to ask you a question. And she's like, okay. So I asked her, why did you say that about this park? And she starts laughing, and she's like, well, that's what I always heard. I'm like, but what does that mean? Like, what do you mean the gay people hang out there? Like, what is that, because then are there like tragedies, right, surrounding gay people at that park, and that because it's super haunted, and it's like, is it haunted by gay people? I don't understand if there's a correlation I should know about. She's just like, no, people just always said it. Back in the day, you'd go cruise the parks, and that's where the gay people cruised, I guess. She's like, I don't know. I never went, so I don't know. Like, okay. But then she was surprised to hear that this section of area, which is close to where she grew up, was really haunted. And so we kind of got on to, that conversation, and explained to her what it was about it that was super haunted. And then she just started talking some more about different experiences within my family that, different stories that people have told over time, or different things people had experienced. I'm kind of estranged from my dad's side of the family, and my mom's side of the family. She was adopted, and then she was dropped off at a children's home, so she didn't really have family. But my dad's side of the family, we're all really close, right? My dad's side of the family is like a hardcore drug runner from Cleveland, Ohio, an Italian man meets little Meemaw down in the holler, and they got married and they had kids. So it's a really interesting dynamic of people, right? They're all very close with each other, but I'm not anymore. And that's okay. That's neither here nor there. But some of these stories I had kind of heard rumblings of growing up, because they were just kind of something that everybody just sort of knew. But this was the first time I'd ever like sat down and really heard the stories. And I wanted to share some of those stories with you guys on the show and listening to the show. So let's get into it. Some of these are, and you guys know I've been doing this for 7 years as an investigator, and some of these stories like had me genuinely petrified. So if you're sensitive to that type of thing, I don't know what you're doing listening to the show, but we're going to get into it. So I'm going to start with my grandpa, the death of my grandpa. You ready for this one? That's crazy. My biological grandpa, he died sometime, I believe, in the 80s, and he died of some horrible, severe cancer. And he died in one of my aunt's house, so one of his daughter's houses. And they were all there, and he is actively dying for whatever reason. And while he is dying, every single one of the kids report seeing this. They said that he turned away from them and was like looking out the window, and turned his face back to look at them. But when he turned his face back, they said that his face had transformed into, they said, like a devil's face. And I tried to kind of, get some elaboration on that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, he was in pain. He just looked, like he was uncomfortable. No, a devil's face. And then when he had actively died, and like the instant he died, his face goes from a devil's face to a horse's face.
What?
Hmm.
A horse's face. I'm like, what does that mean exactly? Now, granted, this is secondhand story from my mom. She was not there when this happened. But she says they all swore up and down that that's what they saw. They said it was weird. So he dies. The ambulance comes and they take him away. And a couple of days later, okay, a couple days later, my aunt, whose house it was, is sitting at home and the phone rings and she answers it, and it's the neighbor across the street. And they go, hey, you might want to come open the door. Your dad's trying to get in the house. And she's like, what? She's like, yeah, your daddy's outside. He's having issues with the door. He's trying to get in. Well, he had died a couple days before that point. So they did not open the door, needless to say. I don't think I would have either.
No.
But that was crazy. That was a wild, this, and my mom's like, oh, you didn't know that story? I'm like, no. She's like, they talk about it all the time. I'm like, I had no clue. So there's that one. Going on to stories, two, I guess, because they're all kind of different, but 3 and 4, is my dad. So I was talking to my mom and I was like, well, or not grew up, but they lived in a haunted house at one point in Springfield, Ohio. And she was like, yeah, she said, your dad said, she said, we had just moved into the house and we really didn't have anything. So we had 2 couches. We didn't have a bed. So we're both sleeping on different couches. And your dad said that he woke up in the middle of the night and he wanted to know what time is it? So he glanced over at the alarm clock, which was plugged in, and saw a little girl standing there. And she was completely transparent. You could see right through her. But he didn't say anything to my mom or anything. And then a couple of days later, he's at the apartment by himself, or at the house by himself. And he turns a corner into a room, like the dining room or something. And he sees like a like a humanoid figure that's like, I don't know, it's like kind of walking on the ceiling. Dancing around the ceiling area. And so,
that's a no-go for me.
Yeah. And she was like, I never saw anything. She was like, but he was very upset by it, like to the point to where he had one of my aunts come over. She blessed the house. He immediately talked to the homeowner. He's like, has anybody reported anything like this? And they're like, no, we've never. Now, my dad was a really, really, really bad drug addict, so he could have been very high. But she said, like, the night with the little girl, they'd been moving that day. He wasn't getting high. He was tired. It could have been a million things, but she said, he swore that's what he saw. So that's another one. Another one that we had, there was a cursed house within the family. My Aunt Tracy owned it. When she initially bought the house, she ended up having 2 sons, and one of her sons ended up having like really severe disabilities. So it kind of started there, but they moved out of the house. She let her brother move into it, and he had like a massive heart attack in his early 40s at the house, with no real indicator as to why or how. He just did, and that happens. Then one of my aunts, another aunt, moves into it. She dies pretty young at the house, and then the house burnt down also, and they attribute that to some type of curse, I guess. There's so many of these, and some of them are just, they're absolutely wild. There was a story that I did hear personally about my grandma. She would tell it about one of her aunts. I think it was her aunt or maybe her mom. She described this woman as like a really terrible, nasty woman. And she's like, and I'll never forget the day that she died. We're at the hospital and we're there with her. And she was out completely cold. The hospital had her very, very out of it as she was dying. But out of nowhere, her legs start kicking around really hard, and she starts talking. And she's saying, ow, oh my God, it's so hot, the fire, oh my God. And then died.
What?
And that was always like a story that stuck with me as a kid. I'm like, that's horrifying. I don't think too much of it now that I know about what the brain does when you die. But there's, like I said, there's just so many of these little weird stories in my family. Maybe I should talk to those people more.
Your dad never told you any of those? I know you were daddy's girl.
No, I was, but no, he never told me about any of those. I guess maybe if he did, I knew about the cursed house, right? Like I was aware. Like these are all things that again I've kind of grown up hearing my entire life, but didn't really know the whole story.
Mhm.
It was like my dad when he my dad was shot. He was a participant in a murder. When I was about a year and a half, he was shot in the arm in the process of killing somebody, and he didn't serve any prison time for it because he testified against the guy who actually shot the gun, and he was mangled the rest of his life. So his arm was always like mangled and stuff, and I always knew that he had gotten shot, but I didn't really know the story until actually I was a teenager and got really good with Google and Googled the court documents and read them myself. Like I had no clue it had anything to do with them, killing their drug dealer and robbing him, like until then. So, you like I said, you hear these rumblings and like you kind of know, but you don't
Right.
really know, I don't. So this is like the first time that I ever like got to sit and actually like, hear some of it. And it was really interesting. So talk to your relatives, ask them questions. You never know what they're going to tell you. So what about you guys? You guys have any weird family ancestral hauntings in your life?
I always thought it would be great to get funding to go to assisted living nursing homes and interview people about legends and lore that they remember, before it disappears.
Oh yeah. There's
Even if it's just family stuff like you were talking about, if it was just grandma's house or the encounter grandfather had or what they had in 80 years ago, that type of thing. But I've just never got around to doing it. But I think that would be very interesting and probably get a ton of stories that you just wouldn't believe.
we had a long time, and she's probably still listening to the show. An old woman who found the show on YouTube, and she would call. We have a hotline that people can call 773-59-WEIRD. If they want to, have something featured on the show or talk about anything. And she called probably about 10 times telling different stories. And she's in a nursing home. I know that because she's like, I'm located here. I'm happy to talk to you. But she told all kinds of stories about, all the different things that she's seen throughout her life and all this. I mean, I think you're right. I think that's a hidden gold mine of information. And unfortunately, if we don't know about it, it's just going to disappear. And probably so many before us have.
Mm-hmm. I know some of the services like StoryCorps and those others that send your loved ones a question prompt every week or every month, and then after a year or something, put it together in a book for you. But I highly doubt they're inquiring about any odd or supernatural stories or occurrences.
Well, it could, and it's still very stigmatized, right? I'm not going to talk to grandma about cryptids or ghosts or aliens. That'd be weird. Grandma's going to think I'm crazy. But I've heard of a lot of grandmas that are like, well, actually, that one time, I was missing a whole day of time, and I don't know what happened to it.
I've had so many seniors come up to me and tell me a story, and sometimes they'll even say, I haven't talked about this in 40 plus years because nobody would believe me, or I didn't think anyone would be interested. And they're not necessarily even looking for someone to investigate, research it, follow up, anything. They just want to tell the story so that it doesn't die with them.
Yep, absolutely. That is, very, very much a trend that, you'll find in stuff like this that Actually aligns with my Frogman Festival talk this year. So that's interesting that you mention it. But it's true. I mean, you're right, because they've already made peace with it, right? It's something that happened 40, 50 years ago. They don't need an explanation at this point. They're not going to get one. It's been 40 or
Right.
50 years. You know? But like you said, just to have somebody have documented it somewhere, know about it, anything, it's just kind of a nice, I'm sure, a nice clearing of the conscious to a degree. So, yeah, no, ask your family those weird questions. Don't be afraid. And what are they going to do? They're going to call you crazy and laugh you out of the room? Probably not. But even if they do, I don't know, laugh with them.
Yeah, my mom believes in all this stuff, but I don't think she's ever had her own personal experience, or she would have definitely told me by now because I'm the weird one. But like my grandma and grandpa, they never said anything to me. They're all four of them are passed away now, but my one grandma, she's one she would always try to scare the crap out of our kids, which out of all the kids, which makes me think she's definitely seen something before. She would put her long dark Native American hair in front of her face. It'd be all wet with a nightgown on and pretend like she's coming from the attic and
Oh.
tell us that's where the bad kids go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had that. We had Eleanor in my family. It was a witch that lived in the woods that would come and take you if you were bad. And they would knock on the door real loud, right? And then run away and be like, "Oh, it's Eleanor," and we'd freak out. Well, then when the next generation of kids came along, one of the adults got the bright idea to make an Eleanor costume, and I think that is horribly cruel. Do not do that to your children. But yeah, Eleanor got an upgrade, and then I think everybody kind of realized that they were taking it too far, and I don't think I've heard of her since. So Eleanor's extinct now.
Wow.
But yeah, ask your family members, and if you need a good opener, just ask your parents, your uncles, your grandparents, what park did the gays hang out at back in the day? And it's a nice icebreaker to get you started, because it doesn't get much weirder than that. So, anyway, obviously, I am shameless plugging all over the place here. Why don't we get into tonight's topic and of course, tonight's guest, Chad Lewis. You're going to be at the Frogman Festival this year. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's going to be a fabulous adventure for everybody showing up. Whenever you can get together like-minded people exploring the weird and unusual, I'm so excited to see the other lectures and presenters. So I think it's going to be fantastic. Jeff Craig has presented at the Van Meter Visitor Festival when I was there, and telling me great stories about the Frogman Festival. So I'm very excited. I put it up there as one of the coolest cryptids out there. So what could be better?
Yeah, it really is. What's your take on the Frogman?
Just fascinating, and I love the bizarreness of it. The pieces of holding some wand or light, a manifesting device, and I love those stories that are a bit odd, a bit out of the ordinary. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Bigfoot stories, legends of UFOs, and that type of thing, but sometimes they kind of run together. A weird light in the sky, a hairy biped running through the woods, that type of thing, where they can get a bit redundant. But when you get these I don't want to say one-offs, because I know there were a lot of different sightings, but those ones that don't fit into that category, those are the ones that really spark my interest.
Yeah, this one, it really is real weird. When I was, of course, writing the Frogman portion of the book, I even say it in the book. Gosh, I digress. This is not the Frogman book. I need to stop. There's so many layers to it. We all know the businessman story, right? Seeing the three creatures with the wand, and then most of the time we also know of Ray Shockey, the police officer in the 70s who saw it crossing the road. But there's just so much more to it that I don't think people even realize. It really is very weird.
Did you get like a good amount of it wrote into the book? Or did you kind of just go with like the basic knowledge that everybody probably knows?
I did. Come on, it's me. I did a little extra. I
Okay.
did a little, put a little extra on there. Just okay. So, like for instance, that business partner sighting that we know of, comes from a man named Robert Honeycutt. Allegedly, that's not really his name, um, but he had reported that sighting to oh my gosh, what's his name now? I can't remember. He had reported that sighting to a Cincinnati local ufologist who had like a publication that he would put out weekly. But the reason why he reported that sighting was because Stringfield was his name. He had already written a similar sighting in that area about four other creatures reported by a volunteer police man. Like it was like a volunteer. He was like just a kid, and he had said he had seen four strange creatures with leathery skin that smelled awful. All these things always smell terrible. I don't know. Maybe they like our soap here, and that's why they visit. I have no idea. But he reports that, and another gentleman had read it in the publication and said, "Oh my God, you got to talk to my friend." And he goes and he hooks the two guys up, and there is the honeycut. It's not even the original frogman sighting, and pretty much nobody knows that. And that's how these things usually go, right? You've got these really cool things. Mothman is a prime example. You just only hear about the 66, the 67 flap, and then you don't hear about anything else. All the human history of all the winged humanoids out there, and all you hear about is this one little patch in time, which is okay. I get it. We're nerds. We're really into it. So we're going to know all the extras. But yeah, I threw some extras in there, and I'm excited for people to kind of get into it. But yeah, I don't know. Chad, do you know the part of the story where allegedly Ray Shockey had actually seen an iguana, and that another police officer had shot and killed it, and that was the end of the story? Are you familiar with that part of it?
Yes. And, I often love stories with law enforcement because at the core level, these are trained men and women that are observers. They're trained to detail oriented what's going on. So I always would put their legends, their observations at a little more credibility than just the general public, who a lot of us aren't trained to observe. But also you have to remember they're obviously protecting their career, and that it might not want to get out that you're the officer that was going crazy over a giant frogman.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yes, I am familiar with the iguana explanation.
Gosh. So I had read a book by a gentleman who will be there, which you should talk to him if he's there. His name's James Renner. And James Renner is not an investigator of the strange. He is a local journalist, and he ends up writing this book called It Came from Ohio. And I had read it, and his Loveland Frogman account, he actually talks about going and speaking with the parents of Ray Shockey. He didn't quote Ray Shockey himself, but he quotes the parents of Ray Shockey, and they had stated that yes, Ray saw something weird, and they made up the iguana story to kind of offset the fact that he saw something strange because he was being made fun of, which is not unheard of at all. The stuff, especially in the 70s, was a lot weirder than it is now. So getting that type of attention as a police officer, you don't want to go apprehend your suspect, and they're like, "Oh, you're the guy that saw that thing, huh?" It's tough. That's tough. But it got me really interested, and so I'll tell this fun story about the festival. So I've been doing Frogman. I've been emceeing at it since it started, every year, and of course, speaking at it. Well, the second year comes around, and a couple of months before it had happened, I'm like, why don't I contact Ray Shockey? And I did. I wrote him a letter. And I'm like, look, just come to the festival and clear the air. If it was an iguana, say that. Come and say that, right? This is an open-minded space. Nobody's going to be upset. Nobody's going to make fun of you. Come, it's a little longer than that. It was like a 3-page letter. Come to the festival. Well, he didn't contact me or Jeff Craig. And so I was like, darn it. So we get through the festival, And at the end of the festival, we're all kind of standing around the convention, center. We're kind of waiting, or the conference center. We're kind of waiting to leave, and it's me and Jeff Craig and some other people. Jeff was the only other person that really knew at the time that I had contacted Ray to try to get him to come to the festival. And they show this Frogman movie every year, and so people are gathering around to go watch that. And somebody comes out and is like, "Hey, I found this card," and hands it to Jeff. And he looks down at it, and then he looks at me, shows it to me, and the last name on that card was Shockey. So I don't know if Ray is interested in, potentially coming. I don't know if maybe he sent somebody. It wasn't Ray Shockey, but it was a Shockey name. I don't know if he's interested in just kind of vetting it and seeing how it goes, or maybe the family wants to talk to, I don't know. Either way, the invite's always open. I think that would be fantastic. Like I said, even if it's an iguana, I don't think that takes away the magic from the other stories of this thing. And I would love to hear from any of them. So
times are different today than they were back then.
Yeah.
People are much more open-minded and interested in it. There was a flap of sightings down in southern Illinois of a Bigfoot-like creature called the Big Muddy Monster. And
oh yeah.
So the police officers are called to the shoreline of the river, the Big Muddy River, midnight, and this couple that was making out in the lot, they saw this monster come up to their car, foul smelling, terrible noise. So they call the police. Police get there, and while they were walking through the dense, mudded forest, one of the officers dropped his weapon, and he was too scared to go back in and get it. So it was a few hours later before he garnered the courage to go back in and grab the weapon. And his name was Jimmy Nash. And for a long time after this, all of the other officers, even though they were called out on numerous occasions to investigate this creature, they were calling him Monster Nash instead of Monster Mash. Gave him that nickname, so it stuck with him. But again, this was the 1970s. Things are much different in modern day America.
But even too, like what we just had an episode on, even if it was an iguana, or people are gonna still believe the story of the Frogman because they want to, like the Dogman movie we just did an episode on.
Oh yeah, the Gable film.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like the guy who made the film said, "No, I made this up. It's not real," and people are still like arguing with him about how it's real.
Yeah.
I think some people confuse a hoax with something, a legend being a hoax.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've had so many. I did a book on a water lake monster called Peppy. It inhabits a lake called Lake Pepin on the Mississippi River, and there's a big reward offered for its capture. And I had someone come forward, and she said, "Oh, no, back in the 1980s, my husband and I made that legend up in order to bring people to the community as tourism." And I spoke with this woman. She didn't know that there had been, 100 years of sightings prior to that. So I tried to explain to her, no, you made up a version of it or a hoax of it, not the actual legend.
Yeah.
How did she take that news?
She thought I was crazy.
Yeah, I get that.
Still stuck to the belief that, we had written, documented newspaper articles for dating back to the Civil War, oral legends long before that. But yet she thought in 1980 she had created this legend. And again, she created a version of it or a story of it. It's very similar to people that will contact me and say, "Oh, you wrote about this local cemetery where you said that things are said to happen at a certain time." And they said, "Oh no, you got it wrong. It only happens at midnight." And, you try explaining, well, that's the version you heard. There are many versions, folklore isn't set in stone. So oftentimes people will contact me saying, "You got this wrong. You got this bit wrong," when, it's not set in stone. When you go to a grave site and it's said that, you knock 3 times and a demon will come out. If you knock twice and a demon comes out, you don't email someone saying you got it wrong because it's not set in stone.
Well, right. Maybe somebody came along before and knocked once, and now you're the second and third,
Yeah, exactly. So I find folklore fascinating like that. It's not like curing cancer where you got set things or science behind you. It's people don't often realize that the folklore they heard may not be the folklore their parents heard or that others have heard, that it's always morphing, progressing, and moving. It's never stagnant.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that, when Jeff Craig decided to do this Frogman Festival, it was quite the gamble on a creature that a lot of people accept as a hoax, right? Because that is the general, that's what the locals think, right? It was just an iguana, But, obviously the type of people that you get at an event like this, it just goes to show, even if it was all completely made up, and there was just nothing to it at all. And hey, that could be the case. I don't know. I haven't caught the frogman yet. But, even if it was, it still doesn't take away the fun that people can have from, at least bonding over sharing these stories together, which is, I think, very important also. But that's why one year I did, one of my talks I did at Frogman was about frog people from around the world, because there's others. Again, you kind of start digging deep and you're like, well, maybe that one time it was an iguana, but what about these other times? What were those?
It's the same iguana.
He just gets around.
It's just a funny looking iguana.
One of my favorite legends of folklore is the hodag of northern Wisconsin and Rhinelander. And I love it so much. And it's a known hoax. It's known that Eugene Shepard created it, but people still love it. They have fun with it. One of my favorite festivals is the Hodag Heritage Festival. So even if things do turn out to be maybe embellished or not quite right, it's still embracing the history of the legend itself.
Well, and it still gives like-minded people a place to gather to maybe share other stories, other things that they've experienced, because you get those people, at even something like the Hodag or Squonkapalooza. That's another one that's just growing every year. People love the squonk, and they should.
Well, it takes the everyday stress and everything away just to go to one of these, hoax or not, whether you believe it or not. You're there, you can have fun, and people want to get away from life right now.
Yeah.
So if there's a legend that brings happiness and smiles and laughter, go towards it, because everybody needs that.
Yeah, that's and it's definitely, these are the most inclusive places that you could possibly go to. I promise there's going to be somebody there who is weirder than you, more awkward than you, all of these things, with crazier beliefs than you have. Just go to these things, be your weird self, and socialize. Talk to everybody. Talk to all the vendors. Talk to all the attendees. It's crazy what you might learn just from spending a day with these people. It's amazing. Chad, what are you bringing? You're coming all the way up from the cold north. What are you bringing to Frogman Festival? What are you going to be sharing with everybody there?
Well, literally, I'm bringing my satchel and hatchet, of course.
Oh, gosh, of course.
I won't be caught dead without that. No hat. I will not have a hat with me.
I hear everybody groaning. And
how can he research without a hat?
And it's impossible, right? Where do you keep your thoughts? I don't know.
Right? But I'm going to be looking at cryptids and UFOs, exploring possible correlations between the two, which is a program I don't do very often. So this is the only place I think you'll see it this year. So if that's your real interest, there's only one place you'll see me do this one. And I love this one because I look at a lot of strange cryptid stories that also are tied in with UFOs, everything from just strange balls of light to interactions with beings on the craft. And I threw this out. And of course, those of you statistic nuts out there that love statistics will quickly remember that correlation does not imply causation. Mm-hmm. But we're looking at the correlation that some of these sightings that also involve unidentified flying objects. And I'm just fascinated by that correlation.
That's a big, because how long have you been doing this for?
Oh, geez. A little over 30 some year, 33 years maybe now.
Wow.
What
Yeah.
was, I mean, what was it like in the beginning when it came to, because I feel like this concept of ufology mixing with cryptozoology is honestly pretty new. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What was it like back in the good days?
Grandpa, tell us what it was like around the spittoon.
Yeah.
No, it really was. It was a lot different where people had their areas that they loved to study, whether you were involved with mysterious creatures or UFOs or ghosts or crop circles, ESP, out of body experience, you name it. And they didn't really intertwine. It wasn't like John Keel's window areas
Right.
coming together. So I first started because I grew up near one of the UFO capitals of the world Wisconsin claims to have. We have 3 of them. And UFOs were very early on my interest list, and I ended up joining the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON. And at that time, there was no talk of cryptids with UFOs or anything else. If you brought up a haunted legend of a haunted inn that also had some UFO activity, well, you threw that away. That couldn't.
Yeah.
There was no reason to even research it. But you're absolutely correct that the last decade or maybe 2, people are more open-minded to looking at, is there something bigger than all of these things separately? Is there some portal? Is there some window area again that connects these things? And, I think anyone who's been doing this a long time will have people tell them a story of one specific phenomenon, and then all of a sudden they'll talk about something else. That they'll be at the beach talking about a weird sea serpent story, and they'll say, oh, there was also this weird metallic object in the sky hovering above it. But, let's get back to the sea serpent.
Sure. Well, and not that these concepts are new, because like you said, you mentioned Keel, right? And he was into this stuff. What, my God, a long time now, 50 years ago, if we're honest. Had mentioned these ties between these things, and of course, even Ivan Sanderson had a big hand in like Flatwoods Monster and things like that, which has always been kind of thrown into the cryptozoological landscape, which is kind of strange because there's nothing cryptid about it, right? It's very much a UFO type of, or at least seems to be a UFO type of story. But why do you think that it's become so popular now?
I think media has helped out quite a bit, as much as I like to throw a shade at the TV shows, especially ones I've been on, that I think it's helped open up people to get them interested. People that are just regular, normal people who may not be diehard into the field, but they're curious about it. They're interested. So I think that helped quite a bit. And that's not just on TV, it's movies, it's books, it's all of the different media out there. Because I learned early on when I was at somewhere asking somebody about a story, we might be at a town with a local haunted legend, and you'd ask somebody, at that time I would ask them, are you familiar with the cursed mausoleum in town? And it would either be yes, here's my story, or no, and that's it. But early on, I started shifting it to, are you familiar with any, odd and unusual stories of the area? I'm collecting anything bizarre. And they might not know about that haunted mausoleum, but they would bring up something of the wild man of the woods. But if you didn't specifically ask for that back then, they wouldn't just volunteer that information. They would just answer, nope, I don't know anything about that mausoleum. Where if you expanded it, they often knew something weird, and it usually was something I'd never heard of.
And what was your process, that I'm curious now? Nowadays you can throw out a post on social media, hey, I'm collecting stories about blah, 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 blah. And people will just run to you, right? My go-to is, if I'm researching something for a specific area, I'll go to like the cities, like I'll join like the city's Facebook group, and I'll just make a post. And people come in droves. What did you have to do back in the day? You just post up at the local cemetery and wait and just, hey.
You're not too far from that. No creepy guys standing on the corner waiting for people to come by and talk to them. No, but it was hands-on. It was in person. So I would usually, if I knew a story about a place and I would show up, we would have a set places that we'd go, the historical society or the local newspaper, which is harder to do these days because they're just not in existence. But you'd look to see if somebody had written a story about a local legend. Believe it or not, bars were fantastic for collecting legends because one, that's what you're there for, to socialize.
Yeah.
And two, people in usually smaller places were happy to talk to new people within the community. But early on, when I started interviewing people, I never wrote down their name. And that just kind of came out of accident in the early days where I would be talking to someone and they'd be telling a great story. And then you'd say, "Can I get your name?" And they'd look at you like, "Nope." And that was the end of the story. So by not asking their name and just collecting these stories, they would just go on with all these details and not have that pressure. Like, is my boss going to read this? Is my pastor going to read it? That type of thing. So there was no hesitancy on their part. So early on, some of the earliest witnesses for some stories, I could not contact again because I never collected their contact information. It was either that or not get any of the stories.
Yeah, well, today's equivalent to that for me is like emails, right? You get all these emails all the time, and what's some of the most fascinating things you've ever heard, and then you're like, "I'd love to talk to you. Here's my number," and you never hear anything.
And then they just don't email back either after that.
Yep. I just did a interview with a gentleman who's writing a fictional book, and part of the book is dealing with the Wendigo. And he was asking me, he's striking out with everyone he contacts to talk about the Wendigo. And obviously he has a two-pronged problem because one, a lot of people don't like talking about it no matter what. But two, he's doing it all cold calling, emails out of the blue to organizations, tribal councils, whatever. And my advice was, if you have the opportunity to do it in person, that people are much more likely to open up to you one-on-one, and they can gauge your interest, how sincere you are, how serious you are, and they're more likely to talk with you than just an email or a phone call or even a letter in the mail out of the blue. It's just so easy for us to all just forget about that. So my advice to him was, if you can, at all possibility, go to these places. People are much friendlier and open in person than they are online, obviously.
Yeah, one thing that's when I first started doing this, which is pretty new, and I had a whole pandemic in the middle of it, that really changed the way that we socialized, was that people were shocked that I was going places and talking to people in person. Like, that was really, and I know that because one of my friends one time was in a group chat and they were talking about me in the group chat, and they're like, "Well, Asher's went to this place. Like, isn't that crazy?" And it's like, well, no, not really. It was only like 25 minutes from my house. Why wouldn't I go there? And you do get it gets weird. It gets very awkward because the amount of people that you encounter, they're like, "No, there's not anything to it." But the more you do it over and over again, you just move on to the next person. When you're talking to people in person, do you feel like when you approach somebody in person now, it's different than approaching somebody, 30 years ago?
Yes. Prime example is 30 years ago, 20 years ago, we go to town and, we'd see a bunch of teens and hanging out on the corner or, at the gas station, whatever they were doing. You would just walk up and start talking to them, asking them questions, notepad out, almost free Willy style. And back then that was fine. That was normal. Where today, people are more hesitant. What's your angle? And one of my favorite things was to look at legends and talk to some high school age or college age kids, and then talk to seniors in the area. And oftentimes the legend would be noticeably different from the older generations, almost as though it's played a game of telephone over the decades, where the legend is different today than it was 30 years ago, that it's changed completely. But yeah, people are, I think, much more open about it. But then, I see online where it seems like any big road in any big city that you can walk on, sidewalk, people are interviewing people straight off the where are you from? And they're doing their YouTube stuff. So I wonder if that's going to kill our witnesses just by the fact that they're afraid, like, what is this for? What are you doing? Are you going to try to embarrass me? Is this a prank? That type of thing. So I wonder if witnesses, but as you know, Ashley, that after a program, how many people will come up to you, where 30 years ago, it might be someone would come up to me and look around, make sure nobody was watching or listening, and then slightly whisper about their story they had, where, as you know now, people just raise their hand and I have the strangest story I want to tell you.
Yeah, no, you're right. I had once I gave a talk. It was about injured cold, and I had no questions, and it was so weird because it was packed, standing room only. I mean, filled to the brim with all these people, and not a single person had a question. It was weird, but plenty of people. I mean, you're right. After you're done talking, everybody, you have a line.
Yeah. Well, one thing I have learned over the years is that I will finish a program and say I'm opening it up for questions, comments, stories, and then I'll do a quick little 1 minute thing of something else, whether it's an additional piece of a story or another case or something I forgot about the lecture, because that gives people a little bit of time to come up with what they want to say. Because you're right that people will line up for a long time wanting to talk to you or share something, but they might not think of it right away, or still some people don't feel comfortable in a big crowd.
Yeah, they had to kick me out of the Mothman speaking area this year. It was I was like, I'm trying.
Yeah, we have another speaker coming up. Get out of here.
Right. Steve's like, oh, sit down or get out. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Good on Steve Ward for keeping the rules of the Mothman going.
He is a absolutely wonderful MC for events. I really love that. He asked what I wanted him, how I wanted to be introduced, and I put like a little joke bit at the end. No, he read it verbatim. I was like, oh, yeah, God, I love you.
See, I wish I would have saw that speech at Mothman, and now I'm completely regretting not being able to go to Frogman this year, because I've never heard someone talk about like cryptids and UFOs like together. It's always one or the other because nobody wants to talk about the woo. And then I want to hear Sherwin's too. So I'm like, man. You just got to do it. You got to forgo your niece's birthday, and I keep telling you, bring her with her. When she gets a little older, I won't feel bad.
It'll still
now
be
it's
happening.
like on that line where it's like she's afraid of me half the time, and then she loves me once she gets used to me. So I got to kind of like get in there and like make it so she wants to see me all the time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Jeff always has a fantastic lineup of people, but he's been doing this for a long time, going to these events and stuff, and so he was a great candidate, right, to start something like this up. I say it all the time. He's such a gracious host. Chad, you're going to be spoiled. You're not going to know what to do with yourself.
I know. I'm used to we slum it in Van Meter. So when he shows up, we're like, well, this is what we're doing, this and that. And yeah, it's going to be joining the A team here.
Yeah, no, he is a professional. It's really fantastic. But yeah, it'll be lots of fun. Can you give us just maybe a little taste of something for the people that can't make it to the festival? Maybe a case that you'll be talking about during your talk.
One of my favorites, and I think one of the weirdest you will ever hear, is a cryptid that most people might not be aware of right now, even though it's one of the most unusual I've ever stumbled across, and that's the Van Meter visitor.
Yes.
And this takes place in 1903 in a small town called Van Meter, Iowa, which is just west of Des Moines, a town of about 900 people back then. And it started out with a UFO sighting. An implement dealer was coming home late at night, a little after 1 p.m., when he saw a UFO on the side on top of a building on their main drag. And he slowed down at that time. Light out in the open was unusual. So he slowed down, thinking it's probably a robber or an intruder or someone breaking into our local bank or something. So he slowed down and came to a stop. And when he did, this light vanished and then reappeared on the other side of the street on top of one of those buildings in a matter of a second or two. And some people said it flew to the other side and was there. And then he watched it for a moment and it's just gone out of sight. And, this was 1903, but they were still familiar with the airship sightings of a few years prior and weird things in their sky. The newspapers were chock full of odd sightings in the sky. So they weren't dumbfounded. They knew there was these airships and that. So he didn't pay it much attention. The next day, things started to get more bizarre when all of a sudden somebody saw that strange light. It woke them up, but they went out and saw that it was a giant 8-foot bat-like creature. And this thing had giant featherless wings. They looked like leather. It had a huge horn on its head, and it was projecting light out of that horn. So this gentleman, who happened to be the local doctor, he actually shot at the creature. Of course, it's 1903, rural Iowa. You don't know something, you're shooting it. And that's what he did, but it seemed to have no effect. For the next 4 nights, so for 5 nights in total, the townsfolk saw this thing. They blasted it. They tried to capture it. They tried to guard the bank's money because of it. And whether they were the worst shots in Iowa or this thing was impervious to their weapons. And after 5 nights, they finally tracked it down to this old abandoned coal mine on the outskirts of town, where the town was operating a brick and tile factory. And the posse had gathered around the entrance to this thing and shot at this monster. And by this point, it had a second one with it, a smaller version, whether it was the female gender or the offspring, I don't know. But they blasted it with so many shots, the newspaper said they could have sunk the Spanish fleet. And it had no effect on these things. They descended into the mine, and the story just kind of left off there. That's it. The newspaper said, well, I guess we'll leave it there. No idea what happened. Did they kill these things? Were they still there? Did they fly off to become the Mothman of Point Pleasant? I don't know. And then the story was nearly forgotten until back in the early 2000s, Kevin Nelson and Noah Voss and I dug up an old article on it and went to Van Meter to dig up the legend of the visitor. So that's the story in a nutshell. And you'll get all the details of, the bank manager blasting out the front window of the bank because in the middle of the night, because he was guarding it and he saw a huge being behind light. And this thing released odors that would erase people's memories. And it could fly without flapping its wings, very similar to Mothman stories. So there's so much to it, and it's so bizarre that, people think that it was made up, that somebody obviously had to make this story up because it was just so darn bizarre. But this was 1903, and if it was made up, whoever was making it up was so far ahead of ufology to talk about bright lights, odors that erase memories, missing memories, impervious to weapons, screen memories, that it was mistaken for other animals, all sorts of things that we wouldn't know in ufology for 50, 60 years after that. So if you do believe it was a hoax, we have to give the suspected author quite a bit of credit for having an imagination that wouldn't come to order for another 6 decades.
Gosh, I was going to ask that because we talk about yellow journalism a lot on this show because it comes up a lot, in some of these stories where you have the one-off wild man or, potentially the Jersey Devil, right? We all know that by now, or, we should, or at least we understand, that it was maybe some of those articles weren't genuine. Who knows? But you're absolutely right when it comes to something like the Van Meter, because when you're talking about those, like the ships that people were seeing, looking at the evolution of ufology, I mean, the crafts, definitely looked more like what we were kind of familiar with at the time. And at the time would have been like Zeppelins, right? They're not discs in the sky because that didn't really exist until Roswell. And then at that point, that really shifted our narrative of ufology, and we just have seen it change over the years. But no, you're absolutely right. Somebody had predicted, right, what the lore would be in, like you said, 50 or 60 years, somehow, some way. I love the Van Meter visitor. We're gonna get married and have Van Meter babies one day. I don't know.
I've done several books on newspaper articles from the late 1800s to the early 1900s of, bizarre deaths, peculiar anomalies, haunted places, by state. I've done them by state, and I've done 5 different states. So I'm familiar with the great yellow journalism, the stories that are obviously made up or embellished. And I thought that when we went to Van Meter, I thought it was going to be the same thing. I said, this is going to be an easy weekend. We're going to go there, interview a bunch of people, look into it, and it's obviously a hoax. It's too weird, because the newspapers were calling it, the headlines were "Monster of Awful Form," or "Create a Reign of Terror," "A Winged Monster," "Horrible Winged Beast." All these great headlines where I said, this has to be made up. There's just nothing to it. And we started digging and found that not only were the witnesses that were listed in the newspapers, not only were they real people in the community, they existed, but they were the most prominent men, of course, at that time. It was the town's doctor. It was business owners, the bank manager, the superintendent of schools. So these weren't your traditional, drunkard that a lot of the media likes to portray seeing these things. Sure. So that right away just switched our entire research of, wait, there might be something more to this than it just being made up. And the funny thing is again, the people of Van Meter were way ahead of their time, because people said it was made up to draw tourism to the town. And the townspeople actually wrote letters to the newspaper saying, don't come here. There's nothing to see. Don't come here. This is a misunderstanding. There's no winged monster. Stay away. So either, again, they were brilliant marketing people saying, don't come here, knowing that people will, or they really didn't want to take advantage of the tourism of that time. And supernatural tourism was unheard of back then.
Yeah, definitely. I remember Jeremiah Byron. Jeremiah, obviously.
Yes.
Him and I talking at one point, and he was telling me one time that he was looking into a potential modern day Van Meter sighting. Now it's a little rusty. This was a couple years ago. That had maybe taken place near a school in the area. Do you know of any kind of more modern potential sightings of the Van Meter visitor, or does it seem to have just completely vanished off into its cave?
That's what we originally thought, that once we put the first book out, we thought that's it. The sighting came in 1903. They lasted for a week, and then people just kind of forgot about the story. There was never a follow-up. I would have thought like 5 years later, someone would have said, remember when that 8-foot bat terrorized our town? But there was none of that. It was almost as though it was a collective agreement to just kind of shuffle it under the rug type thing. But over the years, more and more people started coming forward and saying, I've had experiences. And the old abandoned brick and tile factory is still, some of the remnant buildings are still there. And you can walk out on the road. It's only a couple blocks from the downtown. This is a small, compact area. So you can see where they shot at the monster in front of the opening of the old mine. And you can still go to the bank, which is now a law firm, and see the old bank vault there where they shot out the building and the window. And you can see all this, but kids would go out to the old brick and tile factory, not to see the visitor. They would go out there and because they thought there was a brickyard ghost out there, because they'd go out there and they'd see bricks moving on their own. They see shadowy figures up in the sky, kind of moving quick. And they had never heard the visitor legend. So they said it was a ghost, that it was haunted, throwing bricks and moving shadowy forms. And then people would come forward. A pastor in nearby Colfax, Iowa, just a few years back, was driving down the road and he saw what he thought was a dragon flying in the sky. So he went home and Googled Iowa flying dragon and came across the visitor. And said, that's exactly what I saw. I had a gentleman, again, goes back to me telling you that when you're at a place, that's where the stories come forward. I was presenting just down the road from Van Meter in Winterset, Iowa, about 30 minutes away, and on Iowa Creatures. And a gentleman came up to me, a farmer, one of these no nonsense, salt of the earth type people, and said that, 30 years ago when he was a young kid, he remembered his father running into the house and grabbing a shotgun at night, running back out to the silo. And when he came in to get the weapon, he told his family that Dracula was hanging from their silo.
Ooh.
And he went out and he shot at this thing with the shotgun and then came in and didn't say a word about it. They never spoke about it again. And the son told me, he said, I really wish I would have asked my father, who had passed, more about this. But he was, at that point, Dad didn't want to talk about it. He just said Dracula was hanging from their silo, and he went out and blasted at it. So we do have modern stories of people seeing this in the vicinity of Van Meter, if not, directly in the same location.
Yeah. And that's not to say there's no Van Meter visitor nest, right? You're not going to find a whole little, mama visitor with her little baby hatchlings or anything. But it is interesting, especially when you talk about, it's really fascinating to talk about the haunting in that area, because we do see weird kind of poltergeisty activity and a lot of it. We've seen it a lot with the Mothman stories, right? Linda Scarberry reports tons of it, after they had their encounter with them. And that's just the most famous. But, we also have Skinwalker Ranch, right? Allegedly, not only did they have the UFO activity, but it kind of started with things moving on their own in the house, or all the groceries being outside of the cabinets, or, whatever. So I always find that really fascinating to see that correlation, and everybody just kind of goes, nope, it fits in this box, so it's ghosts, or it fits in this box, so it's aliens, or, whatever. I just think it's very selling yourself short.
I read a lot of older ghost story books from researchers that even predate me, if that's believable. And, I often wonder when they're describing an old farmhouse where things are going on there and weirdness is taking place, that what other oddness was happening in the area that they just didn't document, or maybe they did but didn't want to put it in because they thought it might take away the believability of a story, because now you have UFOs plus a haunting, too far-fetched. But I often wonder how much was left out or just simply forgotten about those stories.
Let me ask you this controversial question. And I know it's controversial because I know what my answer is to it, and I know how people feel about it. Chad, what do you think about ghosts?
Great question. Depends on the day you ask me, actually. And I say that not to avoid the question, but it really does, because sometimes I think when people tell me a story of encountering a spirit where there's some type of intelligent interaction between the spirit and the person, whether it's communication or they see the thing doing something and the spirit looks at them and recognizes them, or seems to anyway. But then you have the other stories of the residual hauntings where some spirit seems to be doing something over and over and over. There's no interaction with humans, that it almost seems to be some imprinted memory, or as though you're watching a video that's happened in the past. So the idea that, most people, when they think of ghosts, think of someone who was once living that has passed away and now is somewhere or sometime other than now coming back. And I've talked to so many people that have had an experience, down to earth, rational, intelligent people who have encountered something that they can't explain, that I think these things are happening. I just don't know what they are. If that makes sense, that I'm left with more questions than answers. And I feel like if I've been doing this a while, that if I do it another 100 years, I may still not know. And I especially bring this up when talking about the Wendigo, that I feel like after 30 years of researching this legend, I know absolutely zero about it, or maybe 1% about it, but nothing. That I just have no idea. I feel like, again, I could research it for decades and I'd still be maybe ahead of where I am now, but still feel like it's beyond me.
Yeah, no, well, and I talk about this in the Injured Cold book because it was so confusing because I fully walked into that case expecting this to just be me talking to a crazy person, right? And this was obviously not real, obviously, right? Right? And then every little bit something changes and changes my perspective on it. And I'm like, oh my God, I thought I didn't believe in this. And now here I am. And it's very frustrating.
Yes. I've learned long ago that I would accept a story on its face value unless somebody gave me a reason not to. That I always said to myself, when you're dealing with the weird, what is too weird? Where do you draw that line? Because I think if you draw that line, you might miss out on some really odd stories. Is a vampire too weird? Chupacabra too weird? And there are stories that people have told me where I thought it was a bit odd that I probably didn't believe it. Like after one program, a gentleman came up to me and some colleagues after a conference and said, you guys have to come to my property. I have several Bigfoot creatures on my property. Can you come right now after the program? We said, sure, we'd love to. That sounds fantastic. Right up our alley. And he said, well, I should warn you, you might not see them like I see them because they're in a different dimension and maybe I can't guarantee anything. So we said, of course, still we want to go and check it out. And he said, well, you might not see them because they do the same things we do. Like they're probably having a pool party tonight and barbecuing and might not want to be disturbed. And still we were, even though that was so fantastical, we still were willing to go, but he kind of backed out of it at that point. So, when he's talking about pool parties with Bigfoot, you kind of think the credibility might not be there. But again, we were still open enough to take him on his word and go there and see. But unfortunately, I wasn't invited and never did get to swim with the Sasquatch.
I was going to say, how do you feel about being uninvited to the Bigfoot? That would hurt my feelings.
But it wasn't even Bigfoot who uninvited you, so you shouldn't feel bad.
It's true. I mean, he threw it out there thinking these guys aren't interested anymore. They're not going to come. And we called the bluff, so to speak. And I think then he backed out of it. And yeah, I tell that story all the time. And I regret that I should have pushed harder to invite ourselves. But at that time, I was a lot younger and I just didn't feel it was right. So, but yeah, I regret that.
Yeah, I would too. I don't know how you sleep at night.
I've had way too many weird things happen to me, like kind of recently that I believe there's something to the other side. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Like I told you, was it 2 weeks ago when we were in the hospital, like somebody said hello, like in my ear and nobody was there. And Brandon standing across the room heard it too and looked at me. And he didn't say anything, but when we got in the car, I asked him, I said, what did you hear? Because I know you heard something. He's like, something said hello. And I said, yeah, what was it? He goes, I don't know.
Well, I was sitting here working. I mean, and this was just within the last week. I texted you about it. And I work from home. I'm at my desk. It's dead quiet in my apartment. And all of a sudden, I mean, right in my ear, I hear a grown man cough. To the point to where, like, I got up and searched my house thinking for sure I was going to find somebody who had broken in, stowed away somewhere. I did not find anybody. And then, I didn't tell you this yet, a couple days later, I have the shelf where I have one of my Ouija boards on it, right? It's a Cthulhu-based Ouija board. It's adorable. Okay. And it just sits out on display. And right in front of it is a big selenite crystal and two Gizmo figurines, Gizmo from the Gremlins. And the Ouija board, it's cute, but it's thin as like paper, right? It doesn't weigh anything, and it kind of leans up against the wall and everything sits in front of it. Well, I'm sitting here at work again, and all of a sudden everything comes off of that shelf, including the Ouija board. It was so bizarre. And I'm talking, I've got this huge selenite crystal. It's like 12 inches tall. It's huge. Wow. And one of the gizmos is like electronic. You turn him on. He sings. He's heavy. Like, I say this again, very almost famously. I'm not sold that ghosts are dead people. And I've said that before. just because if a ghost came and told me that he was a dead person, why would I? I mean, that's like trusting a stranger off the street that says, "Hey, I'm a billionaire. I can't prove it, but I am one." And I'm just like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're a billionaire. I'll get in your weird candy van and we'll go off somewhere." I wouldn't be that trusting of a ghost. So I don't know. Weird things do happen. I say that I have a personal opinion and I have a professional opinion about some of this stuff, and both of those are subject to change given new information. But I'm on board with Chad. It's not my job. People can come in. It's my job to listen, to collect your stories, right? Your experiences, whatever they are. But it's not my job to tell you what you saw. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I'm no expert. Nobody's an expert on what these things are because we've never proven any of it yet. So I can't tell you what it is that you experience. I can only offer you a sense of camaraderie and that knowing that weird shit just happens sometimes. Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
So that is the way it is. I'm excited. You're going to be talking about cryptids and UFOs. The woo, so to speak, right? It's got its own little name, and some people find that term a little, I don't know, condescending sometimes. I don't. I like it. I think it's fun.
I love it.
Yeah, woo! Who doesn't like a little woo in their life? Yeah.
And I'll be getting weirder from the Van Meter visitors, just the starting block, to some really, really weird stories and legends. And again, this is, I think, what Frogman does very well is getting stuff that you're not going to find at other conferences or at other presentations. This isn't a Bigfoot conference that happens 35 times around the country every weekend where you're hearing some of these similar stories. You're getting some bizarre and out there and unique stuff.
Yeah.
That's why I like Frogman, because Jeff doesn't ask his speakers to just talk about the Frogman. Like, he wants everybody to be different and bring different things.
Yeah. And he has, James Willis does the Frogman every year. But you have to. It's the Frogman Festival. You got to have somebody to tell that story. And nobody better than James to do so. He is like the definitive Ohio weirdo. And you guys will find that out next week when we have him on. But but he really does, offer the floor for some of these more, bizarre topics. Jeff doesn't just ask people to come talk due to popularity or status or anything. He asks them to come talk based on substance. And, it's been very well received so far. I've never gotten up there and talked to anybody and felt judged or weird or out of place. It feels very much at home, which a lot of these things, I don't think I've ever given a talk anywhere and felt like I didn't belong where I was. But I suppose it could happen. But yeah, it does. It brings a lot of perspective. I guess I can kind of announce it now that I have officially given Jeff Craig my title. This year at Frogman, I'll be talking about Death and Aliens. It is a live investigation breakdown where I tell the story of Jack Overby, which, we talked about these people kind of die and their stories kind of fade away. Jack's story was basically dead completely. And I'm going to take people along start to finish how I investigated this. It starts with a mystery grave. In which his headstone had engraved on it had communications with outer space life starting in 1913. And nobody knew what this grave meant. So somebody asked me about it. I investigated it and dug out the story. And it's amazing. So I'm excited to tell that from start to finish. It's the first time I think I've ever really investigated something that was unknown, almost entirely, or at least very mysterious. So it's kind of part workshop, part story time. I hope that people like it.
Well, you had me at Mysterious Grave or Mystery of a Grave. So there you go.
It'll be very neat. We covered it on the podcast, so you guys kind of know. But this will kind of go more into, again, how I got to the bottom of the mystery, or at least as far as I could to the bottom. There's still depths there that I'll never understand because it didn't happen to me. But Yeah. And yeah, Jeff definitely gives, it's nice because he gives that space for the comfort, whereas a lot of these places, I've been told what I'm going to talk about if I go speak at one of these events. Chad, I don't know if
Mhm.
you've ever encountered that before, but they're like, oh, I want you to come and talk about this thing specifically,
Mhm.
which is okay. I love to talk about that thing specifically, and I'll do it all the time, anytime. But I like being able to choose my own. I'm assuming you were also given that privilege by Jeff Craig to kind of bring your own topic. And so you kind of touched on it a little bit, but yeah, why are you bringing this one to Frogman?
It's one I haven't done a lot, and I like to save it for special occasions, but I think it's one of my most fascinating ones. And I like to do it where, it seems like this is the only spot you'll see it or get a chance for it. That it makes the festival, I think, more fun and unique when you're not, because I present so much on haunted places and that people have probably seen program, even though it's always changing. But I like to do, and for my own sanity, I love to do new stuff where
Yeah.
I'm not just that aging rocker playing my hits from the 70s, your band playing the same old hits. You like to throw in some new stuff, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I almost always do something different, and I think I'm burning myself out. I need a couple hits, I think.
Yeah. I always found that, for me, a lot of my programs are mysterious creatures of Minnesota or
Yeah.
hauntings of Iowa. And I've always found a good combination of about 50-50, where 50% stuff you just can't leave out, even though you think everybody's bored to death of it. In Illinois, there's a lot of stories that people, Resurrection Mary, if you don't put her in your
Oh, yeah.
legend, the story, people will be upset. So about 50% stuff where no matter where you are, what you're doing, that'll work. And then some other stuff sprinkled in. Again, because people do want to hear the hits as well as your, maybe not your new stuff.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. They do love it. What are you going to be doing while you're here? Do you have any places that on your, on your bucket list that you're going to try to check off, or are you just pretty much coming in and going out as soon as it's over?
Well, if I have time after capturing the Frogman,
Yeah.
I'll probably hit some legend. I'm bringing a colleague of mine, Kevin Lee Nelson, who I've done several books with. Ashley, Kevin.
Yeah.
So he'll be coming. We always legend trip on the way out and the way back. We'll see. Last time we were on the way, we hit Moonville looking for the Moonies.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll probably find some other. We're a sucker not only for legends, but I'm a huge sucker for roadside attractions. The biggest ball of twine or Judy Garland's birthplace, those type of things. So I'll go out of my way embarrassingly long distance to see something like that. So we hit the back roads, give ourselves enough time to stop at these places. And I think I'm only about 8 hours from the festival itself. For me, that's not that far. So again, once I capture the Frogman, I'll have a lot of free time.
Yeah, let me know how that goes. Like I captured him once, and it was all right. I let him go. He was nice. I wasn't trying to cage him up in my house or anything. I get it. He's got to be free, but
yep,
he's
catch and release.
Yeah, catch and release. Jeff Craig usually does a great job doing like kind of not necessarily an itinerary, but just kind of a places you should check out on the area list. So look forward to that in your email. He'll give you some tips. And of course, being, I'm about 40 minutes away from where the festival happens. So let me know if you need some places to check out.
That would be great. And then who knows what mischief we can get into.
We'll catch the Frogman together, and the white T-shirt flasher is local to my area, so maybe we'll catch him too. Get a award. I bring up the white T-shirt flasher, and it's like I don't think he's been active in like 20 years, but man, he lives in my head rent free.
So I have a question, real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so when I think of Chad Lewis, I think of Van Meter Visitor. Like, you're the Van Meter Visitor guy in my head, because I remember Jeremiah always talking about you when me and Jeremiah talked all the time. So like
Mhm.
if somebody comes up to you or they want like a lowdown of the Van Meter visitor, is there like a quick like runoff you could give of him, or is it hard to do that when you're so like into it and know so much information?
Well, great question. It's funny because Ashley brought this up about writing the book in the Frogman chapter, and you inquired with her about how deep did you get into it. And
Right.
that's a struggle for authors, but also lecturers that do you want to get so deep? When Kevin Nelson and I wrote our Wendigo book, we thought we could really do this the right way, but maybe 5 people would love that. Do we want to write it for 5 scholars or do we want to write it for the general public? So it's the same thing with the visitor that I've spoken about it in depth and within a 30-second elevator speech. So I usually give the shorter version, much shorter than I even did tonight. And then if people want to dive deeper, I'm happy for that. But for the most part, I just kind of the cliff notes. For 5 nights, this town was terrorized by some giant monster. And then usually if people are interested, they'll ask deeper questions. But no, I do walking tours of it where we really get deep into the minutia of it. So that's a lot of fun. But for the most part, the general public, they just want kind of the cliff notes, I think.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
that's
it's
always a battle, especially writing. Like, how much do I leave out? Because there's going to be someone that'll email me and say, hey, you left out. Didn't you know this? And not realizing that, yeah, like Ashley said, you could write an entire book about every chapter, but that's not. I always like to think of some of my stuff as a jumping off board if you want to investigate deeper.
Okay.
And if they want something deeper, I happen to have done a book on it. So
yeah. I spent days on the Frogman bit of the book, and which for a book that's just here's this county and here's the things to go visit and basically what happens. I mean, and then I was like, I gotta stop. I can't.
yeah.
You have to kind of find that comfortable stopping point. It's just like when you go to a party and I don't like awkward silence, so I would keep talking, and then it's been 20 minutes and I realize that I messed up. You're like, ooh, I gotta, reel it back a little bit. But you kind of gauge what, the people that are interested, like you said, Chad, they'll start asking questions. Or you just kind of see it in their body language. You're like, okay, not into that. And then you're like, well, are you a ghost guy or what are you into? What are you here for? You start asking them questions.
And you can kind of tell just by how questions are formed about how much they know about a legend. If it's a really detailed question, they obviously know something more about the legend. Or if they're, they get the name of the legend a little wrong, they might not know that much. So you can keep it more general. Just things you learn after doing it, of just interviewing and talking with people, things that you just kind of pick up, I guess.
Yeah, I shared a
I've been
story.
pretty quiet tonight because I'm like sitting back. I'm learning because like I've never met you before, so I don't know. Like Sherwin, I knew what kind of questions I wanted to ask him because we've talked about stuff before, but I've never met you before, so I'm just like sitting back listening and trying to like gauge my own questions.
Sure. No, I get that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, he's also known for his Wendigo stuff. That's how I found out about you, was the Wendigo, which is crazy because I don't know how I didn't run into you with Van Meter stuff, because that was the first that I had really gotten into. Well, Mothman, right? So you eventually hit the Van Meter visitor when you get deep enough into it. But it was Wendigo. Everybody kept talking about, oh man, if you got questions about the Wendigo, you got to ask Chad Lewis. He knows. He's the guy. And and I was like, who is this Chad Lewis? Who is he? And then I found out that you don't wear hats. And I'm like, how does anybody take him seriously? I don't
Right. I know. I think that's keeping me down.
Yeah, it's holding me back.
I mean, really, of all the I've done, and I know this because someone asked me the other day at a conference and I gave them the wrong answer, but I've done 38 books as of today. And if I were to have one buried with me or one that I'm proudest of at the end of the day, it's probably my Wendigo stuff. So yeah, I love all the other stuff, but if there's one where I would say this is my favorite thing that I've done proudest of, it would be probably my Wendigo research. So yeah.
You did it well. I mean, that's, I'm sure you hear that all the time, not like I'm telling you anything new.
Well, I survived, which is a big portion of it. That's
That's very important, right? You're still here to tell the tale. I don't know.
Yes.
I'm extremely interested in this book, The Most Gruesome Hauntings of the Midwest. Like, I keep looking at the cover and I'm like, I want it. Like, I want to read that.
That gets at conferences when I talk about that. And that's a book I did forever on visiting serial killers, spots where they were, untimely deaths, mob hits, suicides, murders, all these things that have a ghost or a spirit or legend attached to them. And I always joke, and it gets a great laugh because people think I'm not serious. But after I would do these every day, I'd come home and watch a Hallmark Christmas movie to cleanse my palate.
Okay.
Kind of get rid of all that. And people think it's a joke, and they're like, haha, funny Christmas movie of Hallmark. But it was true that I was going to these such miserable stories of just a lot of sinister beings and unscrupulous people. And it really did cleanse the palate that I had to, because, it was emotional going to Ed Gein's farm and then checking out where Dahmer was and those type of things.
Yeah, I know. I bet.
Wow.
What was your favorite Hallmark Christmas movie? That's the important question.
I probably have seen, I'm a diehard Hallmark Christmas movie fan. I probably have seen over 100 Christmas movies of Hallmark, and I could not tell you one title of any of them.
Absolutely
Well, they're
not.
all the
Which is
same.
the beauty of it, which is, I think that's the emotional coziness people want, that no matter what, it's going to end the same way. It's going to be fine. You can just sit along for the ride and nothing's going to jump out at you. So yeah, I couldn't tell you one single title after 10 years of thoroughly enjoying these.
I don't think it's Hallmark, but it's Hallmark. It's definitely Hallmark adjacent. Mine's Holiday at Handcuffs. That's my Christmas guilty pleasure every year.
Is that with AC Slater?
I don't think so. It's got
Okay.
oh my gosh, what's his name? Oh my
That
gosh,
might be
I can't remember
too
his name.
old of a reference for you. What's his, Mario Lopez?
Yes, Mario Lopez. Yes.
So people my age know him from a show called Saved by the Bell, where he played a character. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Ask-
is Mario
ask your
Lopez.
grandparents
You're
about
right.
it after.
That is AC Slater. You're
Yes.
right. That went way
Ask
over
your
my head.
grandparents.
And Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yeah, and it was Sabrina. Yeah, I know
Yes.
Sabrina. Yeah. Saved by the Bell, just barely being a 90s baby, slid past that one a little
Oh,
Yep.
Asher's.
Lucky you.
bit. Oh, thank you guys make me feel so young. It's been a while.
Doing my part.
Oh my gosh. Well, are you actively working on a book right now?
Yeah, my newest book that came out was Supernatural Lake Superior, and now I'm doing a Lake Michigan one.
Very nice. Those Great Lake stories are fantastic. They're my gosh, they're so well. We've got Lake Erie here. Just some of the thing. I mean, it's so varied. Some of the stuff that you get, right? You get your lake monsters, and of course your UFOs and mermaids. Tobias had passed me over a mermaid sighting. I was like, I love that. It's a very magical place.
They truly are. They're great for a reason.
Yeah. So, very exciting. Well, I don't want to keep you all night. Except I kind of do, but I have to work at some point in an adult. I hate that. So we should probably kind of, reel things in a little bit. Anything you think, any messages you want to send out to anybody before they show up to the Frogman Festival? Or anything you would like anybody to know about?
Yeah, now that I think of it, I'm going to do something unique. I'll have a little fun surprise for people if they come to my booth and they have a satchel on them or a hatchet, or you know what? I'm going to cross the line. If they're wearing a hat, come to my booth. You get a special little fun thing from me.
Oh my gosh. I got to buy a hat.
Now you have to get a hat. Damn you.
I love that. That'll be very exciting. I don't know what it is. I don't know. It'll be a surprise to me too. So
Yeah,
Well,
there you go.
we'll see. Well, if people aren't already following you, where can they find you in the digital space?
Yeah, you can find me, obviously, Blue Sky. You can find me on Facebook or just Chad Lewis Research, my website. If you want to tell me a story, ask a question, or go to the weirdest legend you can think of, I'll probably be there.
Yeah, probably. That's you're probably like the most notorious cryptid in the Midwest. So
That's true.
oh my gosh, a wild Chad appeared. Um, well, thank you so much for coming on again and entertaining us. I'm way looking forward to seeing you, of course, here in a couple weeks. I just can't believe it's so close. I'm excited. It'll be fantastic. Cassie, do you have any final words? I guess I should have asked you first before I, let Chad close out.
No, I mean, I just wish I could be there.
I mean,
You'll be there in spirit.
Right.
Right, I'll FaceTime you while you're,
Okay, that sounds good.
while I'm giving my talk. I'll FaceTime you. Let's just say hi to the audience.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, with that being said, we will see you back here next Wednesday.